What makes a bad run? How much bad does there need to be in a run for it to be bad? You know, like here's two runs I don't like, Wolfman and O'Neill. The interesting part, the entire Wolfman's run isn't bad. The second half is actually really good. It's even great. And that's what makes it interesting. It's kind of in quality, I think, half and half. I think the first half of Wolfman's run specifically is bad. I think some of those issues are as bad as O'Neill. If the first half is bad and first half is good, is that a bad run? Because it is. Half of it is bad. That's a lot of failure for a book. I presume, and this is just, you know, I know some people like this run. That's cool. I'm not trying to tell anybody else how to think about it or how you should feel about it. I'm just speaking for my own experience, which is I didn't like it. And it leads to that thing where it's weight does a failure carry? Does it taint the rest of the run? For me, here, the way Wolfman characterizes these characters actually kind of does. I think Wolfman's characterization, the way he handles the character, like specifically MJ was a big sticking point, but it wasn't just MJ, it was like Flash and Harry too. They gotta get ignored and thrown away, and ultimately, and the way they're characterized as these kind of very petty, just doesn't fit. Flash should be beyond that by this point, and Harry becoming this, you know, like him going through what he's going through, he should be a lot humbler, a lot more understanding. Like, he's not in a position to give up a hard time to somebody. So to me, Wolfman doesn't, like, the way he handles the characters doesn't feel natural. Like, I don't like using the word, but, you know, ruining the characters, their character development, taking them in a wrong direction, that just doesn't feel natural. Off characters like Harry and Flash, and especially MJ's whole plot, actually ends up doing damage to the run, in a sense that I can't really get past it. Like, it rubs me the wrong way. Even when I'm reading the good issues, I still feel it in the back of my mind, and that to me brings down even the good half. While I enjoy the Black Cat story, I really enjoy the burglar story and the Requiem arc, but it's just, at the end of the day, it's that first half, like some of the choices really bother me. And second half, I think, continues some of that drama, so it's still kind of there, sometimes reminding me of it. So it leads to this thing where it's like, well, it isn't fully a bad book. It isn't even that much bad, but the bad that is there for me taints even the good, so I can't even enjoy the good parts. To me, overall, I just end up feeling really drained and just not liking it. If a run, half of it is good, should I emphasize it, call it a good run or a mixed bag? When overall, like, the feeling is, I don't want to read it. I think that's interesting. I think that's an interesting point, because for some people, it is not the same, like, feeling. Some people might have read month to month. That would change how you feel about it, because it's like, you know, that second half doesn't feel as condensed as it does to me. To me, it felt almost kind of little, because I read it all in a row. I tried to get through it as quickly as I could. At least to this kind of a thing also, where it's, somebody said that I don't pay a whole lot of attention to Wolfman's run, and they were correct. I didn't, because I paid attention to the first few issues. I did not like them, so I ended up just not really being into the rest of it. I kind of tapped out, and it's really hard to come back once the story loses you. So while, yeah, it's like I wasn't fully paying attention, is it my fault or is it the run's fault? Because I would say it's the run's fault. The run failed to bring me into it in a way that I wanted to really pay attention to it and really be with every single detail. I was more eager to get out of the run by the end than I was seeing another Wolfman story. And again, I think that's a signifying that it's not, to me, it is a bad run. You know, if I want to be done with it, it must have done something wrong, in a sense. And there is also another thing which I think is interesting. Wolfman's run's failures with the cast and kind of throwing away some of the old stuff that I felt was happening, it is a smaller scale version of what happens with something like Brand New Day. I felt like something that modern runs do a lot more casually, but it is the same thing. It is the kind of thing where it's like, you know, you had one run doing one thing, taking the characters in that direction, and then just in like one or two or three issues, it's like, boom, all of that is gone and thrown away. We're on a new thing now, and it feels super unnatural. And to me, it feels like it drags the whole thing down. It makes it so much lesser than what it could be. I feel like it's an interesting thing that it's at least for me, it's pretty consistent. I do not like how it is handled later with like a later runs, but I don't like it really here either. It's something that Marvel will keep on doing, and I feel like it is the same thing essentially. And I do feel like another thing that kind of rubbed me the wrong way is, what is it? Peter Parker's character. To me, my favorite part of Spider-Man is Peter Parker's character growth. Spider-Man isn't a static character. He's out of all the superheroes, he's one of the few that he goes through a lot more. He's a different breed of character. And that's fine. Both are fine. There's nothing wrong with writing a Superman who is, like not always the same thing, but kind of has a much stronger basis of this is what he looks like. This is his personality. Peter doesn't. Peter original personality is completely different what he was. Even during like Romita era. Romita era, it's like a massive shift, and it feels relatively natural because it is character growth. And that is baked to the character. I think Conway does a lot of character growth for Peter. I think, then you look at the current era, which, that is a very different take on. And then Peter himself changes fundamentally. It's like one of his core personality traits originally was anger. He's no longer angry. There are moments, issues or two, where he regresses to that, but he's not an angry character anymore. That isn't him. He grew, and I love that. I think that's what made it originally very special. That's one of my favorite things. That it's those disco videos. While I might complain about some of the early Peter Parker stuff, or early Amazing Spider-Man stuff, it kind of makes up for it by Peter's character. If This Be My Destiny is always recommended as this great story, and it's like if you read it in a vacuum, it's still a great story, but it really gains so much more when you see Peter get to that point, when you see him give up after Doc Ock throws him out the window and he just says like, I'm kind of done. I don't think he actually quits. I said he quits. I don't think he actually explicitly quits. He just kind of does his emo shtick. But it's like, you see he go from this kind of a little bit more weak-willed, cowardly, considers, leaving Flash to it, Flash to Doom's clutches. And then, you see him here say like, no, I'm lifting this. I'm getting the medicine to Aunt May. I don't need Johnny Storm to tell me it's going to be all right. I will do it. And he just fights through it. It's the development that makes it hit. To me, it is a very much core part of Spider-Man's DNA. Wolfman is not rewriting those origins. All of that still happened. But, later, after Stan Lee, the character development slows down. Conway does a little bit with Peter being forced to deal with grief once more and has to go through this entire arc of letting go and, being able to accept that he can't save everyone. And it's kind of, I think, a beautiful arc. I think it fits the character of him being learning that responsibility. And you see that, if he fails to save someone, he doesn't get stuck on it doing Wayne's run. It does feel like, okay, Peter has changed. He is more mature. And it makes Wayne's run work, but now we're in Wolfman's run and O'Neill's run, and it's like, he hasn't really changed. Like, he hasn't had that next step. He just kind of is. And during Wayne's run, it feels a little bit more earned to see him be the more mature version. But by Wolfman's run, I really do feel like it's like by the end of Wolfman's run, it's been like 5 years since Clone Saga. I feel like there should be a little bit more growth, and there isn't. And, the plots are fine, but Peter Parker is becoming stagnant. And Wolfman happens to be... He's not the last one to do this, but it is something where it's like he happens to be in the spot where it's the first time where I really start to feel it, where it's like, okay, we've gone for quite a few years now. You could do a little bit more with Peter. And I feel like Wolfman doesn't really do much. He does a little bit with the William. He does a little bit there where it's like, okay, it's Peter Parker kind of like accepting loss and kind of getting over it. And specifically, I Requiem. Oh god, it's been a moment, but I specifically remember it being about Aunt May and Peter bonding. I took it as that they have never talked about it. And this is them opening up and accepting and like kind of sharing the pain, which is a very important part. And it's a very beautiful story. I think it's a great story. It is, might be Wolfman's best, but it is something that I feel like his run is missing a little bit. That kind of development. It's very little because it ultimately doesn't change anything. It's just like kind of adding a little bit, I guess, to the origin in a sense. It is something, but it isn't. I still feel like I wanted a little bit more. And I think in a vacuum, I probably would have enjoyed Wolfman more, but I didn't read it in a vacuum. My experience was what it was, and it was soured by the first week half and the direction of the characters from the supporting cast, and even to a degree Peter. This isn't a bad Peter, but it is a stagnant Peter, and I feel like that kind of brings down a lot of it. And again, the question is, does that make it a bad run? Because again, Peter Parker here isn't bad, just stagnant. If you read it in a vacuum, or even if you read it month to month, like, does that bother you as much? Does it taint it as much? For me, again, I don't want to read the run. I don't like the run. It has clearly a good things in it, but is it a bad run or a good run? To me, it does make it bad. I do think it is the first run that I was like, okay, I don't like this. This is kind of bad. But it isn't bad as in, like, as super clear cut. It's like, I think I think it's fair to say there will be way worse runs. but I do think it ends up being kind of a filler run in a sense. It's kind of spinning its wheels, not really. I don't think Wolfman has a very clear, exciting direction. Like if you look at someone like later writers like Dan Slott, he will have a pitch, you know, whether you like it or not, there's a clear, this is what we're doing. If you look at Conway, of course, clear, this is the development, this is the theme I want to talk about, which is grief. This is what we're doing. Wolfman doesn't have it. Like the first half is just a collection of kind of random stories. Again, I don't think they're very good stories, but they're not all bad either. They're just kind of whatever, I think overall. They're not very notable. I just really wanted to get that out of the way because it's like the video, I probably could have addressed it better, the mixed nature of the run. I don't think I necessarily made the point well enough, but I do see good in it. But to me, the bad is so outrageous, so wild. If it is half and half, the bad kind of overshadows the good, making it, to me, a bad run. But if you like it, that's cool. Like, I'm not here to tell you it's objectively bad and you have to admit it's bad. It's like, no. If you like it, that's cool. That's completely fine. That's completely legitimate. As long as it's your authentic experience, it's real and valid. I'm just sharing my experience from my point of view and my thoughts.